the 270 Winchester versus the 6.5 PRC. One is 100 years old and the other's more like 8 years old. But they are almost identical when it comes to performance. Ballistically, downrange, up close, velocity, everything. Each of them have their own advantages over the other. For example, the 6.5 PRC is going to give you a little more velocity, and you're gonna get higher BC bullets because it's a more modern cartridge. You can have a faster twist barrel that can support those longer, sleeker, those more modern bullets that are gonna give you that superior ballistics downrange. Whereas the 270, you're gonna get a more tried and true cartridge, and you're going to get a bigger diameter bullet, which for a lot of people is a real big deal. So here's our sight-in shots. This is our 270. We had shot 1, adjusted the turret. Shot 2, adjusted the turret again. We have shot 3. We're just going to leave it there. And then for the 6.5 PRC, shot 1, and then I just shot a confirming shot for the 0. And we're just going to leave it there. So they're both hitting about the same spot, about a ½ inch low, each of them. So let's see how they do. First up, you know the deal. We got 2 different diameter bullets, so we gotta visualize it on the steel. You know, we can say a bullet has a bigger diameter, but it really just doesn't give you the same feeling as when you can see that entry wound with a bigger diameter bullet and see how much of a difference it really makes. All right, starting off with the 6.5 PRC. Both of these are going to be shooting Barnes ammo, which I reviewed in my last video. Big fan of this stuff so far. We did some accuracy testing with this 6.5 PRC rifle in that video. If you haven't seen that and want to, go check that out. Shot number 1, 6.5 PRC, here we go. Bingo. All right, 270 up next. All right, here's our shots. Top one is our 6.5 PRC. Bottom is our 277 or our 270 Winchester. So the calibers for these, 0.264 inches for the 6.5 PRC and 0.277 inches for the 270. And just looking at the impacts, I mean, they look exactly the same. I mean, I don't see much of a difference there at all. And normally you won't see much of a difference in the entries, especially on an animal. You know, the fur, the skin, you know, once that impact is made, that skin is kind of designed, I guess you could say, to kind of flat back in on itself. And so a lot of times on an entry, you just see a little pinpoint hole, and it's going to be the exit wound and the wound channel that you're really going to see something going on there. Where you're really going to see a difference with the calibers of the bullets, and I'll show you a clip we have that really visualizes this well, is when those bullets are expanding, they're expanding exponentially, right? And so the bigger your starting point is, you're just going to drastically increase how much that bullet mushrooms. And so while there's a small difference in the bullet caliber, I mean, we're talking 0.264 versus 0.277, that's like a 0.013 inches. That is a tiny difference. But as it's exponentially changing and growing throughout that wound channel, that's where you're going to see the difference of that bullet diameter. All right, next up, we got 4 inches of pressure-treated lumber plus a 1/4 inch of mild steel. Well, it definitely hit the steel. I heard a ricochet, but it might not have gone all the way through. Next up, 6.5 PRC. I did not hear a ricochet there. On the right is our 270, and on the left is our 6.5 PRC. So again, entries look pretty identical. The only difference I see is it looks like the 6.5 PRC may have like collapsed in on itself a little sooner than the 270, and so maybe it got stuck a little sooner than the 270 did. But let's look at exits. Ooh, we got some nice exit holes here. Okay, but again, they look very similar. And honestly, if anything, it looks like the 6.5 PRC has a bigger exit than the 270. That is interesting. And did they? Yes. So they both went straight through the steel. And again, entry holes into the steel look very, very identical. Now here it looks like the 270 might have a slight edge when it comes to the diameter there over the 6.5 PRC, but not by much. So, I mean, really, how much of a difference is that extra diameter in your bullet making? I don't know. I mean, we just went through 4 inches of pressure-treated lumber, a 1/4 inch of mild steel, and through that entire wound channel looks very, very identical in terms of diameter. I did expect to see a visible notice, maybe not a very big visible notice when it comes to the bullet diameter, because, you know, we are talking about a 0.013 inch difference in bullet diameter when it comes to the 6.5 PRC versus the 270 Winchester. But I did expect to see a more visible difference than that. That is almost nothing. If bullet diameter is your main reason for going with the 270, just doesn't seem like there's much of an advantage there. Oh yeah, baby, the main event. We've gone through the steel, we've gone through 4 inches of pressure-treated wood and steel, and now we get to the big boys, the fun challenge. We have probably about 6 inches of water that these bullets need to go through, then 4 inches of pressure-treated lumber, then a 1/4 inch of mild steel. I don't think we have had a single cartridge pass this test. So if either of these do, that would be enormously impressive. And if one of them does, they probably both will because of how similar they are. All right, I know you're all gonna wanna know what guns are being shot here. That's always the #1 question. Whenever a cartridge isn't mentioned or a gun isn't mentioned, oh, what gun is that? Oh, what's the barrel length? Oh, what's the cartridge? So I'm trying not to forget that in the videos. So this, for our 270, is a Mauser 18, a 20-inch steel barrel. This one comes with a 3-round box magazine, which personally I prefer box magazines to hinged floor plates. Just a regular, trusty old synthetic stock, nothing too special. Trigger is pretty crisp. For a factory trigger, I'm actually surprised with how decent it is, especially with, you know, a more budget-friendly factory gun. It's a little heavier than I would like, but again, for an affordable, budget-friendly factory rifle, that's not a bad trigger at all. It's nice and crisp. No grit to it. It's not sticky. This one has a 3 to 18 second focal plane zero tech scope on it. This is the Trace model. It's a pretty decent scope. I always prefer a first focal plane over a second focal plane, just a personal opinion. And then for our 6.5 PRC, we have a gun that we have had on this channel several times. We had done a full review on this on the Backfire channel. Shot it in the Barnes ammo testing in our last video. This is the Bergara Squared SEMA CF. I think that's the name. It's a really long name. Sometimes I forget one of the words. But again, 20-inch barrel. This one is a carbon fiber barrel. Got a carbon fiber stock made by Bergara. This one is running a hinged floor plate as opposed to a box mag, which I think I'm actually in the minority when it comes to preferring a box mag over a hinged floor plate. Also, if my hood looks weird, I apologize. It's just getting really windy and it keeps like floating up into the back of my head, and I thought that looked weirder than actually wearing the hood. Trigger, really nice. Love the trigger on this gun. Nice and crisp, quite a bit lighter than the Mauser. This one's running a Discovery Optics scope. This is a ED LHT Gen 2 3 to 15 by 50 first focal plane scope. Man, the Discovery stuff, it is so inexpensive. and it is, I would say, almost superior to everything else in its price range. You're just getting so much out of this scope. I love the big turrets. They've got bigger turrets than other scopes do. I'm a fan of that. Easily adjustable zero with just that toolless lock. And you know, if backfire is carrying it, you know it's the good stuff. So there's the guns we're shooting. Let's get into our third test. Well, the wind's starting to pick up here. It's like 15-mile-an-hour gusts right now, so hopefully that's not affecting the audio too much. All right, starting off with our 6.5 PRC. Let's see how she does. Oh, that was a big explosion. Launched the second jug way off to the left there. Alrighty, I'm gonna have to go reset up that second jug. All right, 270 time, baby. I mean, man, that looked like the exact same shot looking through the scope, but, well, we'll just have to review the footage. As far as damage goes, this is our 6.5 PRC, or at least half of it, completely split the jug apart. The other half is flying away over there. This is part of our 270 jug, and the other half is somewhere around here, flying down the range. So both of them left the jugs hanging on by 0 threads. So we're at a dead tie there. I'll have to review the slow-mo footage to check the blast radius to see which one exploded the water more. But as far as the actual impacts, on the right we have our 6.5 PRC, and on the left we have our 270. From looking at the entries, it looks like the 270 did not go as far as the 6.5 PRC. It looks like there's a much cleaner hole with that 6.5 PRC, whereas the 270 looks like it's caving in right there. And to me, that's a tell sign that the bullet is stuck pretty close to there. So I doubt we made it all the way through. No, we did not. So our 270 is going to be somewhere around here. And I see no bulging or anything. But it looks like the 6.5 PRC may be poking out right here. Ignore this. That's from a previous video. This is about where our 6.5 PRC should be, and it looks like we've got bulge there. So it looks like, to me, the 6.5 PRC, as far as penetration, is going to win this one. But as far as which one packed a bigger punch, let's review the footage. Oh my goodness. Look at that 6.5 PRC. As far as upwards, that water's not going far. But look at how far left and right that splash radius is. Oh my gosh. I mean, left to right looks almost identical to the 6.5 PRC. But total splash zone looks like the 270. The water from that jug covered a lot more area than the 6.5 PRC. This is where we get down to the nitty-gritty. And there's really just almost no difference between these two cartridges until we get to one thing, which we'll talk about at the very end of this segment. Velocity between the two cartridges is going to be almost exactly the same. And when you talk energy, you know, you're gonna have probably about 100 foot-pounds more energy with the 270 Winchester, which really it's just not really anything to really talk about. Recoil, almost exactly the same. You're gonna have about 2 foot-pounds more recoil with the 6.5 PRC, which almost isn't even feelable. And you know, you throw something like a backstop recoil pad on a nice aftermarket recoil pad, you're really not going to feel any difference in the recoil at all. That's really going to depend on how the rifle is set up between the two cartridges. Now we get to the important stuff, the drops and the drifts. And again, they're almost exactly the same. At 400 yards, your wind drift in a stiff 15-mile-an-hour wind, pretty close to what we got right now. If you got a stiff crosswind going about 15 mile an hour, your 6.5 PRC is going to be drifting by about 12.5 inches, whereas your 270 is going to be drifting by about 14 inches. So we're talking 1.5 to 2 inches of wind drift at 400 yards in a pretty stiff crosswind. That's almost nothing to really even be noted, right? I mean, that is almost exactly the same. Then we get to the drops. At 400 yards, they're exactly the same. They're both going to be sitting right at around 24 inches of drop. When we get to 600 yards, you start to see a little bit of spread, and your 6.5 PRC is going to be dropping by about 4 to 5 inches less than the 270 Winchester. And when you're already dropping 65, 70 inches, how much is 4 inches really, how much of a difference is that really going to make? Not much. Now the kicker. This is the biggest difference between the two cartridges, and the difference you would really why anyone would choose a 6.5 PRC over a 270. Now, because the 6.5 PRC is a more modern cartridge, it is made to fit those more modern, those longer, sleeker bullets that are made to be just ballistically superior at long range. Now, the 270, that is not the case. That cartridge was made something back in like 1925, I think was when the 270 first came out, was introduced. You're just going to get slower twist rates out of your barrel, won't be able to stabilize those more modern bullets. And that's why you're just not able to get those better bullets in the 270. Those more ballistically superior bullets. Now, if you were to go to a fast twist 270, that's a different story. And you might actually find that the 270, if you give it a fast twist, is going to have a slight edge over the 6.5 PRC. But for most people, that's not the case. So we'll stick with what the case is for most people. So with the fast twist, with the 6.5 PRC, the more modern bullets, versus the slower twist 270, you're going to get about 100 more yards of max distance, which for me just means where does it drop? Where does it drop below 2,000 feet per second? And if you're big into the long range stuff, that's a big deal for a lot of people. So which one do you choose? Which one is the superior cartridge? I say it's the 6.5 PRC. To me, if you know me at all, you know the 6.5 PRC is my absolute favorite cartridge. I think it's just superior. I think it beats everything. But that 270 is almost exactly the same cartridge. And so there's nothing really to be said against you if you go with the 270. That's a perfectly fine choice if you take the 270. I would recommend the 6.5 PRC. I think the 6.5 PRC is just I think overall a better cartridge, but a lot of people disagree. A lot of people say the 270. So let me know in the comments what you think is the superior cartridge. If you could only pick one, what would you pick? I would choose the 6.5 PRC. Let me know what you think, and we'll see you in the next one.